Hello everyone. My name is Komal, and I'm the founder of Folkloristan. I started Folkloristan when I was still an undergrad student in 2021. And initially, it was just a passion project where I was just looking into folktales. But then my interest in it grew, and I had more time to work on it. So I kind of, refocused a lot of my energy towards it. Now we're working extensively on translations, on documenting folktales which haven't been documented before, and on other academic projects. So today we're going to be talking about fear and the feminine. And as you know, Pakistan, the Indus River runs through Pakistan, and Pakistan has been home to one of the earliest civilizations in the world, which is the Indus Valley civilization. So there's a lot of folklore because we love telling stories. So before I get into the details, I'd just like to brief you a little on what Pakistani folklore actually comprises of. We have a lot of ethnic groups. We have over 70 languages spoken in the country, a lot of which are oral. So if you go up north in Kashmir, in Gilgit-Baltistan, in Wakhan, you have Himalayan and Pamiri ethnic groups. And then west of the Indus, you have groups like the Pashtuns and the Baloch, who trace their roots back to Central Asia and have a lot of Iranic influence. And east of the Indus, you have the Punjabis, the Gujaratis, the Sindhis, which is more of a South Asian influence. Apart from that, if you're looking at history, uh, there's the Gandhara civilization, there's been the Indo-Greeks, there's been a lot of Persianate, culturally Persianate local empires, and also Persian empires Pakistan has been a part of. Then we've had the Sikh Empire, and of course, at the end of it, we were colonized by the British. And if we're speaking of cultural influences, again, there's a lot of Indo-Iranic and even Chinese influences to some extent, which you can see. If we're speaking about religion, Pakistan has been home to Hinduism. We still have a sizable Hindu community, particularly in Sindh. Pakistan is also the birthplace of Sikhism, and of course, the majority religion is Islam. So all of these just sort of come together to make up the religious influences on folklore. I'd like to get into the friendly first, even though we're going to be discussing fear more than the friendly people, but I think we should give them an honorary mention of sorts. We don't want them to get offended, even if they're nice. Um, so there are certain Jinn queens and princesses and paris. Now, in another talk, I talked at length about how pari is most commonly translated to fairy, but paris are exclusively feminine because the male word for it is parizad. They're pretty, they're winged, and our fairies don't curse. They're always kind, always benevolent, and very nice to us. But other than that, if we're looking at some friendly Jinn queens, we have Queen Hafiza. Some people associate her to the Ahl Bayt, which is the family of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they were martyred at the Battle of Karbala, which is again one of the most popular battles in Muslim history. And besides that, she's also believed to protect from illness. Uh, Sayyida Razia, Sayyida or Sayyid is a title again given to nobility. And she's also extremely well disposed to humankind. And she is the Jinn queen who guards the secrets of wisdom. Queen Zabeda is believed to have powers of psychosis, but not in a bad way, in a good way. She's believed to live in the desert in a golden palace. And if you invoke her or if you have her name on a talisman, um, it becomes impossible for people around you to hide their true intentions from you because she controls hearts and minds, and she also presides over alliances. And interestingly enough, she's also associated to the planet Venus. Then you have Queen Sabra, who again, uh, she fuels love for the heartbroken. And she's also invoked to bring together estranged couples or separated couples. And she also guards fertility. Then you have Princess Najma binte Ahmar. Ahmar is one of the most popular Jinn kings, which we will go on to later. But Princess Najma was believed to actually have been brought up during a very bloody Jinn war, which lasted several hundred years, between the Ahmar tribe, which is her tribe, and the Al-Danahisha. So because of all of that bloodshed, she took it upon herself to prevent bloodshed and protect people, particularly in times of conflict. And I've already spoken about the furries, so I will move on to the not so friendly. Now, the interesting thing is that if we're classifying spirits into unfriendly and deadly, the spirits which have a cultural origin are deadly for the most part, and the spirits we have adopted from religion are unfriendly and not always fatal, if you want to put it that way. So in the unfriendly spirits, we can broadly categorize them into three, which is the Binte Iblis, the Jinnias, and women who practice sorcery, and men. But since we're focusing on women, so let's just stick to the feminine. So Binte Iblis. Okay, Iblis is the leader of the devils in Muslim belief. And the group of devils which works under him is known as the Shayateen. Iblis is known to have a lot of children, and his daughters are collectively known as Binte Iblis. Bint means daughter, daughter of. And that's how a lot of names are actually, that's just how we write names for the most part. So these heiresses to the devil, essentially, there's quite a few of them. Some we know more about, some we know less about. Some I was too frightened to look up more, if I'm being entirely honest. But first off, we have Bidoch. Bidoch is she rules the oceans and the seas, and it is believed about her that if you approach her with respect, she will help you. But once she does help you, you will be enslaved to her forever. Queen Arusa rules the underworld, and she has the status of a queen of sorts, and she does have a host of servants to cater to all her whims. So she is like Hades, if you will. Then you have Zat. Zat is interesting because here is where this is where the underworld and seduction both come together. So Zat basically has the power to allow you to speak to the dead. So, but if you do summon her in a graveyard and she does choose to appear to you, she will demand that you bed her before you can actually converse with the dead. And then there is Zarya binte Iblis, who again has psychotic powers, but not in a good way. She can control thoughts of other people, and she will work to win you attention, win you favor, which will lead to wealth and success and abundance, and even triumph over your enemies. But a lot of times it is again linked to seduction and sexual attraction. And then there's another few of his daughters, which include Naila, Aina, Mustafa, Rababosi, and Safa binte Idris. All of them, they aid people in sorcery and black magic. Moving on to the jinns. Now, the jinns are a creature which have been present in pre-Islamic Arab folklore, but because they're also mentioned in the Quran and other religious texts, we kind of adopted the belief. And there are several different kinds of jinn. There's Jan actually means serpent. The Heen are jinn which appear as animals. Most of the time, it's a scorpion or a snake or a dog. Then there's the Shik and the Snas, which are again weak kinds of jinn, which can appear as animals. And then you have the Ifrit and the Marids, which are actually the two most powerful kind of jinns. The Marids are believed to be solitary, and the Ifrit are believed to be extremely cunning. So belief also dictates Muslim belief that before Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, or the Prophet Adam as we know it in biblical tradition, before he was sent down to the earth with Hazrat Hawa or Eve, it was actually the jinns who ruled the earth. So there were four great jinn elders who ruled the north, south, east, and west. And in turn, all of them were aided by some of the jinn kings of old. There are seven major kings, but a lot of other sources mention nine or sometimes 10 kings. So there was Mazar of the east, Kamtam of the west, Kaswara of the south, and Tekal of the north. The only reason I'm getting into them is because a lot of the Jinn queens and princesses we're going to look into were in some way related to these kings. As per the seven Jinn kings of old, seven of them are related to every day of the week. For Sunday, you have Al-Madhab, who is the golden one, and he actually eats kamtam. And Monday, Al-Abyad, the white one. Tuesday, Al-Ahmar, the red one, and he eats Mazar. Then for Wednesday, you have King Barkan. For Thursday, you have King Samharesh, who's actually eating Kaswara. And for Friday, you have King Zauba, and for Saturday, you have Al Mamun. So if you look at now, interestingly, it's also believed that the Marids were the first type of jinn to actually be created. So all of the jinn tribes were created by the first Marid and his brothers. So we have three Marid queens, Queen Latifa, Queen Leila Amira, and Queen Aisha Maryam, all of whom can be invoked using magic to gift you charm and charisma. And earlier I mentioned that there's 9 to 10 Jinn kings. So there's also King Heather, who's an Ifrit, and his daughter Jalila, and Ruqayya, who's the daughter of Samharesh, one of the seven Jinn kings of old. Both of them are, again, they have powers of psychosis, they can influence hearts, they can influence minds, and they can drive people to insanity and can enslave people. Now, there's also a Ghoul Queen, and here's where it gets interesting because for the most part, ghouls are related to men. And even though Arab folklore counts ghouls as a tribe of the jinn, Pakistani folklore and Persianate folklore do not. The ghouls are a creature different from the jinns, and they come from ancient Zoroastrian belief. They're actually believed to be more powerful than the jinns. But here you have Queen Sabiha Azam, and her name actually means mistress of the boats. So I think that's enough to give you creeps. But anyway, she is believed to guard all the secrets of the invisible world, all the secrets of magic, and all the charms and sorcery and everything. Then earlier we mentioned Aina binte Iblis. Queen Aina is one of Iblis's daughters, and she actually went and she married a rebel jinn princeling. And both of them again make very powerful magic together. And then you have Queen Zaria binte al-Madhab. Again, she's related to one of the jinn kings we mentioned earlier, and she has the powers of both hypnosis and sexual arousal. And legend has it that she is associated to the sun. And she is so pretty that she always goes out with a veil on her face because anyone who sets eyes on her will instantly go insane. Now, if we move on to sorcery, here is where things start to get a little tricky because magic in Islam is forbidden. Excuse me. Learning magic, practicing magic, asking someone to practice magic for you, all of it, it's called seher and it's forbidden in any and every form. And magic is also where things start to integrate with cultural beliefs because we have cultural demons related to magic and things start to get a little deadly. So with that, I think I should give you a little bit of an overview about magic and sorcery in Pakistani folklore. So the thing is that both magic and poison are very interesting to me personally because it's not always the act itself of cursing someone or doing magic or poisoning someone. It's actually the intention behind the act and also who does it. So Shahzadi Mirza is a princess, and in that story, uh, the magician is actually a jinn. So that's okay. The jinn uses his magic to keep her alive and then builds her a palace, and they live happily ever after. In Dil Bachak and the Prince, there's actually two sisters, and there is a sorceress who goes from village to village to test people. She tests the two sisters, blesses one of them, curses the other, and the one who gets blessed lives happily ever after with a prince she falls in love with later on. In Panja Khan, there is a young maiden who's actually also a magician. The sorceress is kept captive by a group of supernatural creatures, which are called the Bala, which we will again look into later on. So Panja Khan manages to rescue her, and then she ends up falling in love with him. They get married, and then when Panja Khan's life is under threat, she actually works to win him a war and protect his life and also free his other wife from captivity. In Kismet Pari, magic is not so nice because even though it's the fairy's father who's doing the magic, but he's using it to imprison her. It's the same in Bairamgor and Shapasand. It's the same in Haftpekar. Uh, but in Haftpekar, there's also some nice magic because the book talks about seven beauties. So seven portraits, literally. So it talks about seven different paris, and all of them know magic. But again, they're paris, they're not human. In Hazar Ratein, which is 1001 Nights, in that story cycle, you have evidence of good magic and bad magic both, again, depending upon the intention of the magic. But if you're looking at later epics like the Shahnameh, which is the Persian Book of Kings, all of the stories have been more or less absorbed into Pakistani folklore in some form or the other. But the sorceresses and the magicians are not really seen in a good light. And then there is this one really famous Urdu epic, which spans over 52 volumes, I believe. Tilisme Hoshaba. So it is about a fictionary world where the laws of physics do not apply, and it's called the Tilism. It is a world created entirely by magic, and every single sorceress in this book is downright evil. But if you're outside of the epics, if you come into demonology, magic is a no-go area. And this is where we get to the part where folklore gets extremely deadly. So there is this one particular creature in Brahui folklore, which is the Jattu. The Jattu is believed to be a human woman in disguise, and women who practice magic and sorcery are believed to turn into the Jattu. So what she does is she steals hearts and livers of women in childbirth, new mothers, and lactating mothers. And also she can also victimize young children, um, particularly before they turn 40 days old. And then there's a creature exactly like, almost like the Jattu, the Al-Ana. But the Al-Ana is found in Balochi folklore. Now, Balochi and Brahui are spoken in the same province, so there's a lot of close proximity. Al literally means red, and Ana means mother. It is a word we've derived from Turkish. Some say that she is also one of the daughters of Iblis. Others don't. However, again, her target is also women in childbirth. Um, And interestingly, this is a creature we share with a lot of other folktales. So there's this one particular legend in which the Al-Ana chews off the legs of her brother's horse because she can't find human prey. And then there's another story that she was caught in the forest with the liver in her hand. And this hunter comes, fights her, locks her up for 7 years. And in those 7 years, women do not die giving birth to children. If you go towards Afghanistan, she takes two forms, Madriyal, which is Mother Al, and Ale Dilkash, which means Al the Beautiful. So the Madriyal appears as an old hag, and she kills babies in their cribs. And the Ale Dilkash appears as a beautiful woman, but she has wings of elastic, and she rips out the hearts of sleeping bridegrooms a night before their wedding. In Azerbaijan and Turkey, she is believed to dwell in thickets, and she's also believed to steal river. And again, there is that belief that she will replace human babies with children of her own, demonic changelings, essentially. And red laces, caps, keeping the children away from the moon, not leaving the child alone, keeping iron near the child to protect the baby and the mother are all very common themes you find around this creature everywhere. It's the same in Armenia, even though in Armenia she can kidnap babies who are as old as 7 months old. And also, noise is believed to scare her, and it's also believed that if she crosses a river or any water body, that's it. Then there's no salvation for the baby or for the mother because she will go to the water, she will wash the liver and consume it. Now, there is a Mongol creature which is also like this, which is called the Albasti. Again, it causes stillbirths, causes disabled children to be born. It results in women dying right after they give birth. And there is also this belief that they come to or come from families who have unpunished sins. And in Iraq, the Yazidi women also have a specific deity they pray to. The deity is called the Pirafat, which Pir basically means saint, and Fat, the chances are it comes from Fatima, because Hazrat Fatma, one of the daughters of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is quite revered in Iraq, partly because a lot of the community is Shia, and she's even outside Shia tradition, in Sunni tradition, she's one of the most respected figures we have in Muslim history. So they pray to her to defend the child and the mother, and again, they place sharp iron objects around the baby and the mother. In the Near East, there's again that resonance of a little bit of Balochi belief that the owl is jealous of Eve's earthborn daughters, and she has sworn to take revenge on them. Excuse me. Um, and after that, you have the Halmasti. I Even though the Halmasti does not appear as a woman, it appears as a hellhound. Again, everything else is exactly the same, and Halmasti sounds a lot like Albasti or Alvasti, which is what it is known in the Central Asian region, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, all of these places. So again, the Halmasti attacks children, attacks new mothers, replaces children with changelings. So all of these are essentially variations of the same creature in one form or the other. What's interesting is that the Halmasti is found at the very north of the country, while the Al-Ana is found at the southern coast, right next to the Arabian Sea. But I think this is a very nice example of how culture and magic and religion and historical influences just sort of come together and influence variations of demons and different cultures. Moving on, we have a host of deadly feminine creatures. The first of these is the Rantas. Now, the Rantas is a witch who primarily thrives in winter. She's a creature from Kashmiri folklore. And what she does is that she kidnaps men. She forces them to bed her, and then she eats their hearts. And also, she can shapeshift, and she's believed to have really long hair which stretches all the way to her ankles. Now, one thing about all of these creatures you see on this page in common is that all of them are susceptible to iron, and all of them have feet turned backward. Then you have the churel, who's also known as the pitchelberry, and sometimes also called the dine. She again preys on humans, uh, particularly on young men traveling alone, people who venture out into thick vegetation at night. And a lot of times she appears in front of children as a long lost aunt and then actually eats the children. Then you have the Bila. Now, the Bila can take one of two forms. It will either appear as a very beautiful young maiden or appear as an old woman who either needs help. In Balochistan, the Bila will appear as an old woman and she will ask you to pick lice from her hair. In other cases, the Bila will either ask you to accompany her or just help her out with something or the other. Um, then you have another very interesting creature, which is the Guat. Now, even though the Guat is feminine, what's more interesting is that the knowledge, which is called ilm, the ilm to expel the Guat and make it go away, is also uh, transmitted from one family matriarch to the next. So the only thing men do in the whole process is play the music while the rest of the rituals are being done. And even though she is feminine in nature, I'm sorry, she's also believed to be shapeless. So if you venture by the coast alone, she will start whispering in your ear and she might attach herself to you. But if you run, then you run. But for the most part, she will most probably possess you and drive her victim to insanity. And people will start displaying signs of self-harm. And I do think that the mum is a very fascinating creature for me again. So the mum is believed to be half woman, half animal of sorts. So the story goes that in Quetta, which was also nicknamed Little London during the time of the British Raj, and when the British won the war from the Egyptians, they installed a Sphinx statue in Quetta. Now, because the Sphinx was so strange to locals with the body of a lion and the head of a woman, it sort of became an urban legend in the city that the mum is a demon. She lives in the forest, in the mountains, which line like two to three sides of Quetta city because Quetta is essentially a valley of sorts. And those mountains are called the Kohe Murdar. Murdar also means the dead because the mountains are very, very harsh terrain and nobody tries to scale them. There's not a lot of life in the mountains. Very dry, very bare. Um, so the mum takes away children, especially if they're going out after dusk, which is Maghrib prayers, which is again a Muslim belief that at Maghrib, after sundown or at sundown, the jinns start to descend to earth and all of the supernatural beings, they start gaining power. So kids in particular are told to stay indoors. Um, and she doesn't only attack children, she will attack cattle, she will attack goats, and she will leave people vanishing without a trace. And then you have the Gore. The Gore are a certain group of witches. There's about 6 to 7 witches in a group. It and they're known as the Gore in one language and Rui in another language. Both of these are in the very north of the country in Gilgit-Baltistan. These witches pick a victim And for the most part, they usually have a mortal man with the gift of second sight, who's known as the Martirel or as the Hirblas or the Roi Middu. They enter his dreams when he's asleep. They make him, sort of go and bring them the next victim in his dreams. And once he does, they will take that victim, they will slaughter the victim, pick at its flesh. There will be a Sabbath at the full moon. And after that, human blood will be drunk and their rituals will continue. Uh, then there's also a group of demons who can be potentially deadly, but they're not always deadly. First up is the Kazabol. Now, the Kazabol actually always makes me laugh. Uh, Now, this might be a foreign concept at this point for a lot of you, so I will just go into it a little. In Pakistan, we don't have nuclear families. Everybody lives together, and your mom's cousins, your dad's cousins, their kids, your kids' kids, everybody is family. So when you have such a close-knit family, there's also a lot of family politics. And particularly in rural or even in smaller towns, even in the metropolitans, for crying out loud, when people have nothing else to do, they gossip. Okay, we all love a good gossip session. So there are certain, it's just a thing. Every time you're celebrating, somebody is going to get upset for not being invited or not being given due importance or some other stupid reason. It's just a very Pakistani thing, a very brown thing, actually. But anyway, so the Kasabul is a woman who's perfectly normal during the day. And at nighttime, she turns into a hyena. Kasabul literally means hyena in Pashto, and this is a creature specifically from the Pashto-speaking belt of Balochistan, so the northern half-ish of the province. And as legend has it, if you figure that someone is a Kasabul, there was this one woman who three of her husbands died, and then the fourth one saw her transform into a demon. So he started to keep her locked up at night. And after that, eventually, after a few years, she regained normalcy. Then you have the Jalpari. The Jalpari is what you know as the mermaid, half human and half fish. So here's the thing. Earlier, I described how the paris are always good. The Jalpari in Persian folklore is always a good omen, especially because only because she has the word pari in her name. So paris and evil are just a foreign concept to us. But in Pakistan, we do have some mixed influences. Perhaps we got them from the British, perhaps we got them from the Greeks. I don't know where we got them from. But the Jalparis can be both nice and kind. They can save your lives. It's also said that when a Jalpari cries, it's going to cry pearls, which is also a belief which resonates in Korea. So I don't know how that came to Pakistan. I mean, Korea is very far away. But anyway, the thing about the Jalpuri is that in Punjab, now Punjab literally means the land of five rivers. So the Jalparis don't live in the sea, A. They exclusively live in fresh water. And they really like flowers, so you can give them flowers and get safe passage for yourself. Other times, they might lead you to treasure. They might save your life if you're drowning, etc., etc., etc. There's also a specific kind of Jalpari, which is found near the island of Rai. Rai is a mythical island in a river which flows from China to Pakistan. There's also a lot of Urdu proverbs about the island of Rai, which I will get sidetracked. But over there lives a mermaid with wings, and she's called a Mahim Mantuk. So in the daytime, she stays underwater, and at nighttime, she flies out, comes to the riverbanks, eats grass, and just chills and vibes under the moonlight. And then when it's morning, she disappears again. The third one is the Nag. Now, a Nagni can be nice to you if you have a pure heart And if you are evil, she can choke you and eat you up. Now, the Nagas were a specific race of divine beings, half human, half serpent. This is an influence we have taken from Buddhist and Hindu cultures. Maybe both, maybe either one of the two. But the Nagas are very similar to, if you guys have watched the show on Netflix, Shahmaran. It's again about a half human, half serpent race. So similar creatures with different names are also found in Turkish mythologies, Persian mythologies, etc. Excuse me. So the shishaka is again, it hangs upside down from trees, and it comes out at night in the graveyard. So graveyards are a place you're particularly told to avoid, especially after sundown, and definitely not alone. So the way it attacks you is that it attacks you from behind. So it will either give you a smack on the head or a scratch on your back. If you're weak, you might bleed to death. Otherwise, you might, manage to come home. And for the most part, the aftermath with any supernatural creature is a really high fever. This is also something we see in the Istara. There is a village in Chitral where a woman was said to have drowned in the river, and now her soul sort of haunts the place. So she pants and she wails, and when you try to follow that panting, you get lost. And she also will drive you to insanity unless you manage to take refuge somewhere else or in your home. So her whispers are everywhere and nowhere. And then you have the Zander. Zander is again a kind of a witch. But one thing I forgot to tell you about the Shishaka is that again, it also integrates into religious belief. In Waziristan and in Muhammad, there is this belief that if women don't uh, cleanse themselves for 4 months, they will turn into a shishaka. And if men don't pray 5 times a day for 3 months or more, they will also turn into a shishaka. And I personally find that very fascinating. So the Xander is again a kind of a witch. Again, they're humans, but they have the gift of second sight. They can attack you, they might not, but if you do encounter one flying in midair, the chances are you will end up with a fever. A lot of these creatures can actually show up as animals, particularly snakes, scorpions, dogs, bats, and even rats. The belief in snakes and scorpions comes from Islamic tradition. Bats comes from entirely indigenous tradition. Dogs and rats comes from Persian plus a mix of religious tradition. Now, in Zoroastrian tradition, the rat and the dog were dirty animals you should stay away from, and they had evil spirits associated to them. Muslims are advised not to kill a snake and not to kill a scorpion unless there's one near home. And there was actually an incident where Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who was one of the wives of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she killed a snake and then she saw a dream which terrified her so much that she thought that the snake might be a Muslim genie. Uh, so for that Muslim jinn, she paid blood money to the state treasury, equivalent of what you pay for a person. In Chitral and in Gilgit, witches are believed to have shapeshift into bats. The word Zander literally means I, if I don't have the word wrong, I'm really sorry. Okay, never mind. I don't want to misquote anything. But yeah, And interestingly, there is also cultural beliefs that if you kill a snake or if you kill a scorpion, either kill the pair, like kill the male and the female snake both, because if you kill one, the other one will come after you and it will see to it that it bites you and you are poisoned to death. But before I wrap this up, and if you want to come to Pakistan here and you want to go ghost hunting or searching, here's your guide to safe traveling. Don't go anywhere after dusk. Traveling alone is dangerous. Uh, be careful with graveyards, forests, deserts, seashores. Watch out if you see something hanging from a tree. Be careful if the moon is full. Always check, always ask the woman to walk ahead of you so you can see if her feet are the right way around. For women, it's also said that you should keep your hair tied up and covered so the jinns don't see it and fall in love with you. Men are told to not wear very strong perfumes, especially when passing under trees, and because the churels might fall in love with you. And also take a woman with you because they will attack you if you're alone. And for adults, watch out for kids around you. And I think that's about it for this presentation. And if you have any questions, please ask away.